The gavel slammed down, and 20-year-old Zara Adams felt her whole world shatter. Her own father stood on that stage, gripping her arm so tight his knuckles turned white. He was selling her, his own daughter, right there in a Nevada saloon in front of every man in town. $50, an old rancher. 75, the butcher with rotting teeth. 200, a miner with hungry eyes. And Zara? She refused to cry. She refused to break. Even as her father announced, she came with nothing but the clothes on her back and a spirit that needed breaking. Then a stranger's voice cut through the chaos. $500. A cowboy she'd never seen before just paid a fortune for her freedom. But when she demanded to know what he wanted, he asked her something no man had ever asked. Where do you want to go? What Zara didn't know. This mysterious stranger was hiding a dangerous secret, and the truth about who he really was would change everything. The lesson. Sometimes your lowest moment becomes the first step toward everything you were meant to be. And true love doesn't cage you. It sets you free to choose your own path. If this story touched your heart, drop a comment telling me what freedom means to you. Subscribe and hit that bell so you never miss another story that speaks to your soul. And share this with someone who needs to hear that their darkest chapter isn't the end of their story. The sound of that gavel hitting the bar top cut through the saloon's afternoon chatter in Paradise, Nevada. On a makeshift stage stood Zachariah Adams, his hand clamped on his daughter's arm so hard you could see the white of his knuckles. Zara Adams, all of 20 years old, with hair the color of wild honey and eyes that spit green fire, stared right over the heads of the gawking men. It was a scorching day in July of 1875. "Gentlemen," Zachariah's voice rumbled, "my daughter needs a lesson in minding her elders. She's turned down 3 good men, slips out of the house at night, and just yesterday I caught her trying to hop the train east. For 20 years I've put a roof over her head and food on her plate, and this is how she repays me." He gave Zara a rough shove. "So I am selling her to whoever bids the highest. She comes with just the clothes on her back and a stubborn will that needs taming. Spirit that needs breaking." A firestorm was brewing inside Zara's chest, but she kept her mouth shut. Her father had hauled her here right from their home after finding her with her bags already packed. She had been fixin' to run to San Francisco, where her mother's sister lived. That woman had built a life for herself without needing a husband to do it for her. That was the kind of life Zara was aiming for, not being hitched to one of her father's business partners just to help him get a better foothold in town. "Do I hear $50?" Zachariah hollered. A low rumble of voices moved through the room. A few men chuckled, figuring it was all for show. Others leaned in, their interest piqued. "50, called out a gray-haired rancher who looked to be at least 60. 75, another man yelled, a heavy-set fellow who ran the butcher shop and had teeth stained brown from tobacco. A knot tightened in Zara's gut as the numbers kept climbing. This could not be real, not in the year 1875, not in a place that was part of the United States of America. But her father was thick as thieves with the powerful folks in Paradise, even the sheriff, who was just standing over in a corner with his arms crossed, a troubled look on his face. 150, the butcher called again. 200. A miner with hands like leather and a hungry look in his eyes. The bidding went on, and Zara felt the sting of tears. She blinked them back hard. She would not give her father or any of these men the pleasure of seeing her break. $500. The voice was deep, steady, and did not belong to anyone she knew. The crowd shifted and made a path as a tall man walked toward the front. He wore dust-caked boots, old denim pants, and a dark blue shirt with the sleeves rolled up to show his sun-browned arms. A brown Stetson was pulled down low, hiding his eyes. He stopped right in front of the platform and looked up. 500, he said again, his calm gaze locking with Zachariah's. His own. Zachariah's eyes got a little wider at the amount, then they narrowed with distrust. "Do I know you, mister?" "Name's Wade Lawrence, just passing through." He placed a leather pouch on the stage floor. The heavy clink of gold coins echoed in the now quiet saloon. Zachariah tore it open and counted the money with greedy haste, then gave a satisfied nod. Sold. He pushed Zara forward so hard she nearly fell right off the stage. The stranger Wade caught her by the arm. His grip was strong, but it did not hurt the way her father's had. "You will thank me for this one day, girl," Zachariah said, not even looking at his daughter as he stuffed the money in his pocket. "Maybe now you will learn where you belong." Zara's voice finally returned to her. "My place is not with you, nor is it with any man who thinks he can buy a person like livestock." Wade's hand tightened just a little on her arm, a silent warning. His eyes, she saw now, were a shocking blue against his sun-weathered skin. He could not be much older than 25 or 26. "Your things?" he asked her, his voice low. "I have nothing," she replied, her own voice like ice, just like my father so kindly pointed out. Wade gave a single nod, then began to guide her toward the saloon doors. The crowd parted for them again. Some of the men looked let down, while others just seemed entertained. Zara saw the sheriff, who at least had the good grace to look ashamed of himself before he turned his back. Outside, the Nevada sun was relentless. Wade led her to a beautiful dapple-gray horse tied to the hitching rail. "Get on," he said, making a step with his hands to give her a boost. Zara just stared at him. "Why should I go anywhere with you? You just bought me like I was a sack of flour." "Would you rather go back in there with your father?" Wade asked. His face was impossible to read under the shadow of his hat. She thought about it for a second, looking back at the saloon. No, she definitely did not want that. "I want to go to San Francisco," she declared. "My aunt lives there." Wade looked her over for a long moment. Then he just asked, "Where to?" The question threw her for a loop. He was not ordering her to come with him. He was not acting like he owned her. "What do you mean?" she asked, a little suspicious. "I mean just what I said. Where do you want to go? You mentioned San Francisco. That is a long ride from here." Zara's brow furrowed. The anger started to fade, replaced by confusion. "Why would you spend $500 just to turn around and ask me where I want to go?" A small smile touched Wade's lips. "Let's just say I have my own reasons. Now, are you getting on this horse? Or do you want to wait for your father to come out and find you still standing here?" That made up her mind. Zara put her foot into his hands and let him help her up onto the saddle. Wade mounted up behind her like he was born on a horse, with one arm settling around her waist to take the reins. She went stiff as a board when he touched her. "I am not going to hurt you," he said softly, right next to her ear. "But we need to put some miles between us and your father before he comes to his senses and realizes what just happened." With that, he made a clicking sound with his tongue, and the horse started off at a good clip, leaving Paradise and her father in the dust. Zara did not look back. She kept her eyes forward, her mind spinning with questions. Who was this man? Why did he step in? And the biggest question of all, what did he really want with her? They rode for the better part of an hour without a word between them, surrounded by the endless desert. The sun was getting low in the sky when Wade finally pulled the horse to a stop next to a little creek. "We will rest here a spell," he said, swinging down from the horse. He offered a hand to help her down. Zara paid him no mind and slid off the horse on her own, almost losing her footing when she landed. It had been years since she had been on a horse, not since her mother passed away. Her father had sold her mother's favorite mare the day after the funeral. "You are not from Paradise," she stated, watching Wade lead the horse to the water. "I would have remembered seeing you around." "No," he agreed, "I'm not. I have been pushing cattle on drives between Texas and Nevada for a few years now. Just brought a herd to a ranch outside of town yesterday." "That does not explain what you were doing in that saloon at that very moment, or why you would spend $500 on a complete stranger." Wade took off his hat, showing a head of thick, dark hair that curled a little at his collar. He ran a hand through it and put the hat back on. I heard some fellas talking in town this morning about a man who was threatening to sell his own daughter. I figured it was just tall talk until I walked in and saw it was true. His jaw tightened. No man has the right to sell another person. Not his daughter, not anyone. There was something in the way he said it, something that made it sound like more than just a belief he held. Zara looked at him a little closer. You still have not explained the $500. That is more money than most cowboys see in a whole year. Wade knelt down by the creek, splashed some water on his face, and then drank from his hands. I have been saving my pay. There is not much to spend it on when you are out on a cattle drive. It was not the whole story, and they both knew it. But Zara was just too worn out, too wrung out emotionally to push him on it. She sat down on a smooth, flat rock by the water, feeling a powerful thirst come over her. She leaned over to drink, then sat back up and looked at her own face in the water. Her hair had mostly come undone from its pins during the ride, and it now hung in messy waves around her face. Her cheeks were red from the sun and the wind, and her eyes had a haunted look she did not recognize. Was this what being free felt like? Being bought by a stranger, and sitting by a creek in the middle of nowhere? We can reach Elkwood by the time it gets dark, Wade said, breaking into her thoughts. It is a small place, but they have a good inn. You can get a hot meal and a real bed for the night. And then what happens? Zara asked, looking up at him. You will just let me leave after spending all that money on me? Wade looked her straight in the eye. That money bought you your freedom from your father. It did not buy you a debt to me. Once we get to Elkwood, I will give you enough money to get to San Francisco, if that is still what you want to do. Zara's eyes narrowed. Why would you do that? What is in it for you? A troubled look seemed to cross Wade's face for a moment. The satisfaction of knowing I did not just stand by and watch something awful happen when I had the power to stop it. He turned away from her and started checking the horse's saddle. We ought to get moving if we want to make it to town before nightfall. Zara got to her feet, though she was reluctant. Whatever this man's real reasons were, he was right about one thing. She needed to put as much land as she could between herself and her father. She let Wade help her back onto the horse this time, and they headed west again. As the sun started to go down, painting the desert sky in shades of gold and deep red, Zara found herself starting to relax a little against Wade's steady back. The arm he had around her waist felt less like he was holding her captive and more like he was keeping her safe. Still, she stayed on her guard. In her 20 years, she had learned that men hardly ever did a good deed without expecting something for it later. The lights of Elkwood finally appeared as the daylight faded. The light was bleeding out of the sky as they rode in. The settlement was just a wide spot in the road, really, with a dusty main street and a handful of buildings, one of which was the inn they were looking for. Wade swung down and tied the horse to a hitching rail outside the 2-story wooden structure. Inside, a stout woman with salt and pepper hair gave them a long look from behind the counter, her curiosity plain as day. We'll be needing 2 rooms for the night, Wade said, his voice low as he set some coins down. The woman's eyebrows climbed. Only have the 1 room left, cowboy. A whole crew from the Circle R is bunked down for payday. Wade's jaw tightened. Is there another place in town to get a room? Afraid not. This is all there is, unless you fancy the livery stable. Zara went rigid. The thought of sharing a room with this man was out of the question. I will take the stable, Wade said, cutting her off before she could protest. The lady gets the room. He gets the car. The innkeeper just shrugged. Suit yourself. She slid a key across the worn wood. The room is at the top of the stairs. It is the last door on your right. The dining hall is through there, she said, hooking a thumb toward an archway, where the warm smells of supper were drifting out. Kitchen's open for another hour. Wade gave her a nod of thanks before turning his attention to Zara. You should get some rest. Come morning, we can sort out how to get you to San Francisco. Zara's fingers closed around the cool metal of the key. a wave of uncertainty washing over her. Was he truly going to bed down with the horses just so she could have a room to herself? "Thank you," she managed to say, the words feeling foreign. It had been a long time since a man had earned her thanks for simple kindness. Wade just nodded. "Do you want to get a bite to eat first? I reckon you must be starving." And she was. Her father had hauled her to that saloon before she had even had her midday meal. "Yes," she admitted quietly. They stepped into the dining room, a noisy space filled with rough-looking men who all stopped to stare as they walked in. Wade led Zara to a small table in the far corner. He took the chair with his back to the wall where he could watch the entire room. That was the way a man sat when he was used to trouble, Zara realized. A server soon brought them 2 steaming bowls of stew with thick slices of bread and mugs of black coffee. Zara ate like she had not seen food in days, trying her best not to look like a complete savage. Wade took his time, his eyes moving between his plate and the other men in the room. "Why did you really step in for me today?" Zara asked, once the sharpest edge of her hunger was gone. Wade put his spoon down, giving her question some thought. "Well," he started, "my sister was 16 when a man, twice, to get to the closest town." Zara's breath hitched in her throat. "I am sorry. It happened 8 years ago. I was 18 years old, just trying to find my own way in the world. I could not help her back then." His blue eyes locked with Zara's. "But I could help you today." The pure, simple truth in his voice made Zara turn her head away first. "My mother passed on 3 years ago," she said after a little while. "It was consumption. She was the only person who ever stood up to my father. After she died, he changed, became harder, and wanted to control everything. And that is when you chose to run to your aunt." Zara nodded. "She sends me letters now and then, but my father has no idea. She has a little dress shop in San Francisco. She told me I had a place with her, a chance to learn the trade." She ran her finger along the edge of her coffee cup. "I want to make my own life, not be sold off like a piece of land for my father's benefit." "A fair thing to want," Wade said. He finished his coffee and got to his feet. "I ought to check on my horse. You should get some rest, Miss Adams. Tomorrow we will sort out how to get you to San Francisco." As he walked off, Zara watched him go, noticing the sure way he carried himself, and how the other fellas in the room seemed to size him up, and then decide he was not their trouble. There was an air about Wade Lawrence that told you he was a man you did not want to cross, but otherwise he was happy to keep to himself. For the first time since being forced onto that auction block, Zara felt a tiny spark of hope. Maybe this whole nightmare would end up better than it started. Upstairs, her room was small but tidy, with a skinny bed, a washstand, and a window that looked out onto the main street. Zara cleaned up as well as she was able with the bowl and soap they gave her, then sat on the bed, suddenly hit by everything that had happened that day. She had been sold by her very own father, bought by a man she did not know, and now here she was, all alone in a town she had never even heard of. She was getting ready to travel to a city she had never laid eyes on, to go live with an aunt she had not seen since she was a little girl. That is when the tears finally came, hot and fast, and all the feelings she had been holding down all day finally broke loose. She cried for the mother she had lost, for the father who had loved her once before. Sadness twisted him into a man she did not even know. And she cried for herself, lost in a world where women were treated more like property than people. When she had no more tears to cry, Zara laid back on the bed, and tiredness took over. Her very last thought before drifting off was of Wade Lawrence's steady blue eyes, and the surprising kindness in his voice when he had asked where she needed to go. Morning arrived with the clatter of wagons and horses on the street down below. Zara woke up confused, for a moment not remembering where she was. Then the day before came, rushing back to her, and she sat bolt upright. The sun was pouring through the little window, telling her it was later than she normally got up. A knock on her door made her jump. "Miss Adams, are you up?" It was Wade's voice. Zara quickly smoothed out her wrinkled dress and tried to fix her hair before she opened the door. Wade was standing there in the hallway, clean-shaven and looking a whole lot more rested than she felt. He was holding a small cloth bundle in his hands. "Good morning," he said. "I took the liberty of buying you a few things for your trip." He passed the bundle to her. "It is not anything fancy, I am afraid." The selection at the general store was a bit slim. Zara unwrapped the cloth and found a simple comb, a small bar of soap that smelled like lavender, a toothbrush, and a light shawl. "Thank you," she said, truly touched by his thoughtful kindness. "Breakfast is ready downstairs. After we eat, we ought to talk about your travel arrangements." Wade paused for a second. "I've been asking around. There is a stagecoach that comes through here tomorrow heading west. It can get you as far as Carson City. From there, you could hop a train to Sacramento and then another one right into San Francisco." Zara nodded her head slowly. It sounded like a good plan, but the idea of traveling that far all by herself was frightening. "Have you ever ridden on a stagecoach before?" Wade asked her. "No," she confessed. "I have hardly even left Paradise since we moved there 10 years ago." A flicker of what looked like concern showed in Wade's eyes. "It is a tough journey for a seasoned traveler, much less for someone taking their first long trip." "I do not have much of a choice," Zara reminded him. Wade looked like he was thinking something over. "Let me take you," he said after a moment. "At least as far as Sacramento. I have made that trip before, and it would be a whole lot safer than you going alone." Zara just stared at him. "You have already done more than enough for me. You cannot possibly want to spend days on a stagecoach just to make sure I get to California safely." "I have not been to California in a while," Wade said with a casual shrug that did not quite hide the resolve in his eyes. "And as it happens, I do not have anything else pressing right now. What about your work? The cattle drives are winding down for the season. The herd I brought to Paradise was the last job I had for a bit." Zara paused. A part of her wanted to say no, just to show she could handle things on her own, but the other part, the sensible part, knew just how many dangers a woman faced traveling all by herself. "I cannot ask you to do that," she said at last. "You are not asking, I am offering." Wade's face softened just a little. "Just think of it as part of the price for your freedom." There was something in the way he said it that made her think there was more to his offer than just being a gentleman. But before Zara could ask him about it, he motioned toward the stairs. "Let's get some breakfast. You can think it over while we eat." The dining room was not as busy as it had been the night before. They took the same table in the corner, and the server brought them plates of eggs, bacon, and biscuits with gravy. While they ate, Wade laid out the trip in more detail. 2 days on a stagecoach to Carson City, then a day on the train to Sacramento, and then another half a day to get to San Francisco. "It is not a pleasant ride," he warned her. "Stagecoaches are cramped, dusty, and they only stop for a minute to eat and swap out the horses." "I am tougher than I look," Zara said, lifting her chin up just a bit. A hint of a smile touched Wade's lips. "I do not doubt that for a second, Miss Adams." "Please call me Zara," she said before she could stop herself. "After all, you did buy me." The words sounded more bitter than she had meant them to. Wade's expression grew serious. "I did not buy you, Zara. I bought your father's claim on you. There is a big difference." She looked down at her plate. "I know, and I am thankful. It is just so humiliating being sold off like a head of cattle." "That shame belongs to your father, not to you," Wade said, his voice firm. Their eyes met from across the table, and for just a second, a silent understanding passed between them. Or maybe it was just one soul recognizing another who had also seen hard times. "I will accept your offer to escort me to California," Zara said finally. "But I have to insist on paying you back as soon as I am able. My aunt will help me get a job, and I will send you the money just as soon as I can." Wade looked like he was about to argue, but then he seemed to see the pride in her eyes, and thought better of it. "As you wish." He spoke, saying, "There is no rush, though." With their immediate path decided, Wade figured they ought to wander through the small town. "You will be doing plenty of sitting on this trip," he told her. And we should probably pick up a few more things for your travels. Elkwood turned out to be a regular frontier town, all dust and practicality. But it had a certain charm to it. The general store was stocked mighty well for its size, and Wade was insistent on buying Zara a good, strong traveling bag, a fresh set of clothes, a canteen, and a hat with a wide brim to keep the sun off her. "This is far too much," she objected while the man behind the counter wrapped up their goods. "Think of it as an investment in a peaceful journey," Wade replied. "A sunburned and thirsty partner would make for a long and miserable ride." His dry way of talking surprised a laugh right out of her, and it might have been the first real one she had let out in months. The feeling was strange and wonderful, almost like finding a treasure you had long forgotten. They used what was left of the day getting everything ready for the trip. Wade made plans to have his horse boarded in Elkwood until he got back. He bought their tickets for the stagecoach, and he sent a telegram ahead to Sacramento to ask about the train schedules. Zara could not help but admire how efficient and knowledgeable he was. It was plain to see this was not his first long haul. That evening, as they sat down again in the dining room of the inn, Zara found herself looking at Wade with a bit more courage. In the soft lamplight, she noticed the faint lines around the corners of his eyes, the kind a man gets from squinting into the sun for years. A little scar cut right through his right eyebrow, and his hands, while clean, had the calluses and tiny marks of a man who was no stranger to hard work. "How long have you been a cowboy?" she finally asked. Wade thought on the question for a moment. "I started working with cattle when I was 16. Before that, I was just a farmhand on my family's place back in Missouri." "And what about your family? Are they still out in Missouri?" A darkness seemed to fall over his face. "My folks passed on, not a year apart. Farm fever took them. My younger brother, he's in St. Louis now, got a job with the railroad." "I am so sorry," Zara said, her voice soft. "It appears both of us have lost a great deal." Wade just nodded, his face looking grim. "Losing folks shapes you. It makes you the person you are." He looked straight at her then. "What are you planning to do in San Francisco besides helping your aunt?" The question took Zara by surprise. She had been so set on just getting away from paradise, she had not given much thought to what came after. "I want to learn," she said after thinking on it. "I want to read more books, to understand how the world works, and maybe even try to write myself." Now, she paused for a moment, then said, "My mother was the one who taught me to love books. But my father always said that too much reading put dangerous ideas into a woman's head." "And does it?" A hint of a smile played in Wade's voice. "Well, I certainly hope so," Zara answered, a small smile appearing on her own face. Their talk went on late into the night, drifting from their favorite books. Wade, to her surprise, had a liking for Shakespeare, all the way to their dreams for what lay ahead. By the time they said goodnight, Zara realized with a start that she felt at ease with this man who had been a complete stranger only the day before. As she got ready for bed, she thought about the strange new path her life was on. Just yesterday morning, she had been plotting to sneak out of her father's house with no idea what would happen next. Now here she was, about to set off on a journey across half the country with a cowboy who had paid a small fortune just to see her free. The stagecoach pulled in a little after noon the next day, a dusty old carriage pulled by a team of 6 horses. It was already holding 4 other people, a couple in their middle years who said their names were the Hendersons, a salesman named Pritchard, and a young preacher who went by Reverend Collins. Wade gave Zara a hand up, then swung himself in right after her. The inside was a tight squeeze, with just enough space for the 6 of them and the bags they carried. The bigger trunks were tied down on the roof. "Is this your first time on a stagecoach, miss?" Mrs. Henderson asked with a kind voice, seeing the wide-eyed look on Zara's face. "Yes, ma'am," Zara confessed. "Well, you best get ready for a bumpy ride," the older woman said with a smile that showed she knew what she was talking about. "And do not be afraid to lean on your husband when the road gets rough. That is what my man's shoulder is for after 30 years of being married. Zara felt her face grow warm. Oh, Mr. Lawrence is not. We are not married. Wade jumped in without missing a beat. Miss Adams is my cousin. I am seeing her safely to her aunt's house in San Francisco. That explanation seemed to be enough for Mrs. Henderson, though Reverend Collins did raise an eyebrow just a little. Zara gave Wade a look full of thanks for his quick thinking. A man and a woman traveling alone and unmarried would surely cause talk, but cousins were just fine. As the stagecoach jerked into motion, starting what was bound to be a hard trip, Zara caught herself thinking about the real Wade Lawrence. He had told her some things about his past, but she had a feeling there was a lot more to his story than what he had shared. Why was he really in paradise on that particular day? And what made him willing to go to such lengths to help a woman he did not even know? The first day on the road was just as rough as Wade had said it would be. The coach rocked and bounced over the uneven ground, kicking up a cloud of dust that found its way through every crack. They made a short stop at a way station to eat a meal of beans and beef that was tough as leather, and then they pushed on until dark. The place they stopped for the night was not much more than a sturdy house with a few rooms set aside for travelers. All the men slept in one big room, and the women slept in another. The beds were simple and hard, but after being tossed around in that coach all day, even a hard cot felt like a blessing to Zara. The second day was much the same. By the time they finally rolled into Carson City, Zara was sore all over, covered in dust, and bone-tired. But she also felt a rush of excitement. She had never been so far away from home, and she had never laid eyes on such different kinds of land. The Sierra Nevada mountains stood tall and grand in the distance, and the air itself felt new. It was crisper, and it smelled of pine instead of desert sage. Carson City was a true sight to see after all the little settlements they had passed through. A real city with solid-looking buildings, busy streets, and a feeling of being permanent that most frontier towns just did not have. Wade got them rooms at a hotel not far from the train station. Real rooms that had proper beds and their own private washrooms. The train heads out at 10 tomorrow morning, he explained to Zara as they stood in the hotel lobby. We ought to be in Sacramento by the time night falls. Zara nodded, suddenly realizing how out of place Wade looked in this city. His clothes were worn from the trail and his skin was dark from the sun, marking him as a man who belonged more on the open range than in a town. But he carried himself with that same quiet confidence here as he did out in the wild. Would you care to join me for dinner once we have had a chance to clean up? He asked. I would like that very much, Zara said. To be honest, she felt a little lost without his steady presence nearby, a feeling that unsettled her considering how little time she had known him. An hour later, Zara made her way down to the hotel's dining room feeling like a whole new person. She had taken a real bath for the first time in days, washing away all the dust from the road. Her hair, clean and combed, fell in soft waves down her back. The new dress Wade had bought for her in Elkwood, a simple one made of blue calico, was a huge improvement over her rumpled traveling outfit. Wade was already in the lobby, looking just as refreshed. He had shaved and put on a clean shirt, although his clothes still showed he was a working man, not a city gentleman. You look, he started, but then seemed to stop himself. Refreshed, he finished. But the look in his eyes told her he might have meant to use a different word. The hotel dining room was quite fancy for a frontier town, with white cloths on the tables and real glass to drink from. Zara felt a quick sting of sadness, as it brought back memories of similar dinners with her parents, back before her mother got sick when her father could still be kind and even laugh. What is on your mind? Wade asked, seeing the look on her face. Zara gave a little shake of her head. Just thinking about old times. Being in a place like this, it just reminds me of how things once were before my mother passed. Wade nodded, showing he understood. Time has a way of changing everything, he said softly. Especially people. They ordered their meal, which felt like a great luxury after days of eating way station food. And while they ate, Zara found herself wondering again what would happen once they finally got to San Francisco. Will you go back to Nevada after we get to the city? She asked him. Wade took a drink of his coffee before he answered. Eventually, I have some business to tend to in Sacramento first. What kind of business? The question came out before Zara had a chance to think if it was too forward. He paused for just a second. It has to do with some property. I have been thinking about settling down, maybe getting away from the long cattle drives. Oh. Zara was surprised at how that piece of news made her feel. Of course, Wade had his own life to live and his own plans. She had no right to his time after this journey was over. Still, the idea of them going their separate ways in Sacramento left her with a strange feeling of emptiness. Perhaps, Wade said, choosing his words with care, once you are all settled in with your aunt, I might come to call on you in San Francisco, if you would be all right with that. Zara looked up at him in a hurry, and for a moment she saw a rare look of uncertainty on his face before he hid it away. I would like that, she said, and she meant it with all her heart. Something changed between them in that moment. It was a small shift in the air, a new kind of awareness. For the very first time, Zara let herself admit that what she felt for Wade Lawrence was more than just gratitude, and thanked him for his help. The rest of their supper was nice and easy, and they talked about everything from the history of Carson City to what they both figured Sacramento and San Francisco might be like. When they finally said goodnight, Zara felt a strange mix of excitement and worry about the road ahead. It was not just the trip on the train she was thinking about, but the journey her own heart was starting to take. The train ride to Sacramento was something brand new for Zara. It was nothing like the tight, dusty stagecoach. The passenger car was pretty comfortable with soft seats and big windows that showed off the amazing country as it rolled by. As the train started to climb into the mountains, Zara pushed her face right up to the glass, amazed by the tall pine trees and the incredible views. She turned to Wade, who was sitting next to her, and said, "It just takes your breath away. Never in my life dreamed the world could be this beautiful." Wade's face softened a little as he saw how excited she was. This world has got plenty of beauty in it, if you just know where to look. Their trip took them through mountain passes that ran alongside fast-moving rivers, and then at last down into the Sacramento Valley. That whole place was so green and full of life, a big change from the desert they had just left. Later that afternoon, the conductor called out that they were getting close to Sacramento. As the train started to slow down, coming into the edges of the city, Zara felt a little flutter of fear in her stomach. Soon, this part of their trip would be over. Wade would go handle his business, and she would have to go on to San Francisco all by herself. Sacramento's train station was a whirlwind of noise and people. Porters were hurrying around with bags, folks were getting on and off the trains, and sellers were hollering about newspapers and snacks. After the calm of their train ride, all the noise and chaos felt like a lot to take in. Wade kept a gentle but firm hand on Zara's elbow, guiding her through the mess of people and into the station's main building. He looked up at a big schedule on the wall and said, "The train for San Francisco leaves tomorrow morning. We ought to find a place to stay for the night." Zara asked, "Will you have enough time to finish your business that fast?" Wade paused for a second. "It might take a couple of days, but that is no reason for you not to go on to your aunt's place like you planned." Zara bit her lip, not wanting to say out loud how scary it suddenly sounded to finish the trip alone. "Of course," she said, trying to make her voice sound easy and casual. "That makes perfect sense." Wade looked like he was about to say something else, but then a man's voice called out his name. They both turned around and saw a man in a nice suit walking toward them. He looked to be in his 40s with a tidy beard and smart-looking eyes. "Lawrence, I thought that was you." The man held out his hand, and Wade shook it. "Judge Harmon," Wade said, and you could hear the surprise in his voice. "I did not expect to see you here." The judge explained, "I am in town for the circuit court session." Then his eyes landed on Zara with a curious look. "Forgive my bad manners," Wade said. "Judge Harmon, I would like you to meet Miss Zara Adams. Zara, this is Judge Thomas Harmon from the Nevada Territorial Court." Zara gave a polite nod, wondering how in the world Wade knew a territorial judge. "It is a pleasure, Miss Adams," Judge Harmon said with a gentlemanly nod. "Lawrence, I am mighty glad I bumped into you. There have been some new developments on that matter we talked about. Maybe we could have a word in private." Wade glanced over at Zara, looking like he was caught in the middle. "Please, do not let me hold you up," she said right away. "I can just wait right here." Wade thought about it for a moment, then nodded. "I will not be long," he promised, and then he and the judge walked a little ways off. They were too far to hear, but Zara could see by their faces that they were talking about something serious. Wade would nod his head every now and again as the judge did most of the talking. What kind of business could a simple cowboy have with a territorial judge? That question just added to Zara's feeling that there was a whole lot more to Wade Lawrence than he was letting on. Just like he promised, Wade came back after a short talk. "Sorry about that," he said. "The judge has been giving me a hand with a legal issue." Zara watched him closely and said, "It looked serious." "It is, in its own way." Wade did not seem like he wanted to say any more about it. "Let's go find that hotel. You must be worn out from the trip." They got rooms in a hotel not far from the station, and after they had a chance to clean up, they went down to the hotel restaurant for supper. While they were eating, Zara could not help but study Wade, thinking about all the secrets that seemed to surround him. "All right, I can see the wheels turning in your head," he finally said, putting his fork down. Zara gave a small smile. "I have about a few dozen questions, actually." "Well, ask them," Wade said, plain and simple. She thought about what to say first. "You are not just a cowboy, are you? There is more to your story than that." Wade sat there quietly for a long moment, his blue eyes looking thoughtful. Then he let out a sigh. "You are right. I have not been completely honest about who I am." "Who are you really, Wade Lawrence?" Zara asked in a soft voice. Wade looked around the restaurant for a second, then he leaned in a little closer. "I was a deputy United States Marshal for 3 years before I went back to ranching." Zara's eyes went wide. "A marshal?" That explained why he always seemed so in charge, so watchful, and maybe it explained his connection to the judge. Wade nodded. "I still do a job for the marshal's office now and then. Unofficial things, when they need somebody who can move around certain folks without being noticed." "Is that why you were in Paradise on a job?" "Yes and no." Wade paused. "I was on the trail of a man, a cattle rustler who had a price on his head. I got word he was in Paradise, but finding you on that auction block was not part of any job." Zara took in all this new information slowly. "So when you told me you delivered a herd of cattle, that part was true." "I have been working cattle drives in between jobs. It is a good way to stay hidden, and I like the work." "And your business here in Sacramento?" "It is partly about the rustler I was after," Wade admitted, "but it is also personal. I have been saving up to buy a small ranch near here. The judge has been helping me work through some of the legal papers for the sale." Zara leaned back in her chair, trying to make this new picture of Wade fit with the man she thought she knew. It all made a certain kind of sense, though. It explained how capable he was, how calm he was in dangerous spots, and how he had such a clear idea of what was right and what was wrong. "Why are you telling me all this now?" she asked. Wade looked her straight in the eye. "Because I reckon I am done keeping things from you, even by not saying anything." The plain honesty of his words took Zara by surprise. Before she could think of what to say, Wade kept going. "There is something else you ought to know. I have made up my mind to take you all the way to San Francisco, not just to Sacramento. That is, if you will let me." Zara could not pretend she was not relieved to hear him say that. "I would like that very much," she said. "But what about your business here?" "It can wait another few days." Wade's expression grew softer. "Getting you to your aunt's house safe and sound feels more important right now." Later that night, as Zara got ready for bed in her hotel room, she thought about everything he had told her. Wade Lawrence, the cowboy who was also a former marshal and her surprising protector, was starting to mean more to her than she was ready for. The thought of getting to San Francisco and having to say goodbye to him was not just scary anymore. It was painful. She tried to scold herself for thinking such things. They had known each other for less than a week. Her whole life was turned upside down, and she had no idea what her future held. This was no time to be getting attached to someone. But still, as she started to fall asleep, it was Wade's steady blue eyes and his quiet strength that filled her mind. The train to San Francisco left Sacramento at 9 o'clock the next morning. It wound its way southwest, passing through green farmlands and little towns that were starting to grow. Zara and Wade got seats together by a window. The other people in their car were a mix of businessmen, families, and a couple of women dressed in fancy clothes that Zara could not help but stare at. She wondered if everyone in San Francisco society would expect her to be so proper. Her plain dresses would surely make her stand out as a country girl among such fashionable people. "You've got a frown on your face," Wade pointed out. "Having second thoughts about San Francisco?" Zara shook her head. "Not really. I'm just now realizing how little I know about living in a city." Wade's eyes followed hers to the well-dressed ladies. "Your aunt is a dressmaker, is she not? I bet she will help you figure all that out." "I suppose so," Zara sighed. "It is all just starting to feel real, how much everything is changing, and how much I do not know about the world I'm about to step into." "Change can be a scary thing," Wade said, "but it can also be exciting. You have got a clean slate. You can be whoever you want to be now." Zara thought about that. "I wonder who that will be." "Someone remarkable, I have no doubt," Wade said. And he sounded so sure that Zara felt her face get warm. The train ride went by fast, and the scenery slowly changed as they got closer to the coast. By the early afternoon, they saw their first peak of the San Francisco Bay, a huge sheet of blue water with all kinds of ships scattered across it. "It is just magnificent," Zara whispered, leaning over Wade to get a better look out the window. "You just wait until you see the city itself," Wade said. "There is nothing else in the world quite like San Francisco." As the train chugged into the station, Zara felt a mix of excitement and nerves. She had sent a telegram from Sacramento to let her aunt know when they were coming, but she had not had a chance to get a message back. Would her Aunt Cordelia be there to meet them? And would she welcome Zara as warmly as she had hoped, had hinted at in her letters? The station in San Francisco was a whole other world, busier by far than the one in Sacramento. It was a complete mess of noises, smells, and people going every which way. Wade stayed right by Zara's side as they pushed through the swarm of folks, grabbing their luggage and heading for the main doors. A woman's voice cut through the racket, calling out, "Zara, Zara Adams." Zara turned and saw a slim woman, maybe 50 years old, dressed sharp in a dark red traveling suit with her graying blonde hair tucked neatly under a simple hat. It had been a long time, but Zara knew her mother's sister in an instant. "Aunt Cordelia," she said, hurrying over. The two women hugged tight, and then Cordelia held Zara out to get a good look at her. "Well, look at you," she said, her voice full of warmth. "You are the spitting image of your mother at your age." Her eyes, green just like Zara's, were shining with both happiness and the start of a few tears. "I was worried my wire wouldn't reach you in time," Zara told her. "Luck was on your side. I was right in the shop when the boy delivered it." Just then, Cordelia saw Wade standing a few steps back, giving them their space. "And this here must be Mr. Lawrence, the man who brought you." Zara introduced them, suddenly feeling uneasy. How much was she supposed to tell her aunt about how they met, about how Wade was the reason she got away? Wade saved her the trouble and spoke to Cordelia himself. "It is a real pleasure to meet you, Mrs. "It's Miss Adams," Cordelia corrected him with a kind smile. "I never did get married, and the pleasure is all mine, Mr. Lawrence. I thank you for getting my niece to San Francisco safe and sound." A carriage was ready for them right outside. As they rode along the city streets, Zara found it hard to focus, caught between the amazing views of the big city, the hills, the water, and the impressive buildings, and the talk going on between her aunt and Wade. It was clear that Cordelia was a woman who got straight to the point. "So, Mr. Lawrence, Zara's telegram didn't say much, other than you were bringing her from Nevada. If you don't mind my asking, how did y'all end up traveling together?" Wade shot a look at Zara, making it plain that it was her story to tell. "It is a mighty long story, Aunt," Zara started, not sure where to begin. "After Mama passed away, Daddy changed. He got real controlling and angry all the time. He tried to set me up in marriages I wanted no part of." Cordelia's face grew stern. "I suspected something like that when his letters quit coming and yours started sounding so careful. 3 days ago Zara had to take a breath. "He put me up on a platform in the saloon, said he was going to teach me to obey." Cordelia gasped, her hand flying to her chest. "Good heavens, you mean to tell me Zachariah actually tried to sell you?" "He did more than try," Zara said softly. "He sold me. To Mr. Lawrence. Then Mr. Lawrence right away asked me where I wanted to go, and he brought me here because I said San Francisco." Cordelia looked at Wade, her face a mix of pure shock and deep thankfulness. "You bought my niece's freedom." Wade looked uncomfortable with how intense she was. "It just seemed like the decent thing to do, ma'am." "The decent thing?" Cordelia said again, her voice low. "Mr. Lawrence, I don't know a whole lot of men who would say buying a woman's freedom and then riding with her halfway across the country was just the decent thing." Wade shifted a little in his seat. "Miss Adams has given me her word she will pay me back when she can. I told her there is no rush." "Pay you back?" Cordelia looked from Wade to Zara and back again. "That is nonsense. I will pay back whatever amount my brother-in-law squeezed out of you this very minute." "That really is not necessary," Wade said, his voice firm. "I insist." Cordelia's tone made it clear there would be no more argument. "I may not have the kind of money Zachariah has, but I do all right for myself with my shop. Now tell me, how much did that disgraceful business set you back?" After hesitating for a moment, Wade told her the price. Cordelia's eyebrows rose up a bit, but she just nodded her head. "I will have a bank draft made up for you in the morning." The carriage made a turn onto a quiet street lined with trees and tidy houses, stopping in front of a lovely 2-story home with a little garden out front. The bottom floor was a storefront with a tasteful sign in the window that read, "Cordelia's Creations." "Well, here we are," Cordelia announced as the driver gave them a hand down. "My home and my living. I live right upstairs, and there is more than enough room for you, Zara. Mr. Lawrence, I will not hear of you leaving. You must stay for supper. After everything you have done for my niece, it is the very least I can offer." The inside of the shop was a wonderful surprise for Zara. Beautiful dresses were set up on display forms. There were bolts of fabric in every color and feel you could ever imagine. And through a doorway she could see a workroom, where a few young women were hard at work sewing. "It is just wonderful, Aunt," Zara said, and she truly meant it. "It is just like you described in your letters, but even more beautiful." Cordelia was beaming. "It has taken years of hard work, but yes, I am mighty proud of what I have built." She led them up a staircase at the back of the shop into a cozy apartment overhead. "Let me show you to your room, Zara. I am sure you want to freshen up after your long trip. Mr. Lawrence, please go on into the parlor and make yourself at home." Zara's room was small but sweet, with a window that looked out on the garden behind the house. Cordelia helped her unpack the few things she had, clucking her tongue over the small wardrobe. "Well, we can fix that in a hurry," she said. "You will have new dresses inside of a week. Now, you tell me everything, the whole story, not that short version you gave me in the carriage." Zara sat down on the bed, and all her feelings just came rushing up. "Oh, Aunt, things have been so awful since Mama died. Daddy became a man I did not even know. At first I told myself it was just his grief, but it never got better. He got wrapped up in his business and what all the people in town thought of him. He looked at me like I was just a piece of property he could trade to get ahead. She told her about the 3 men her father had picked for her, all of them older and with money, and all of them more interested in having a young wife to show off than in Zara herself. She talked about her plan to escape, about being caught and hauled to the saloon, and the shame of having to stand on that makeshift stage. And then Mr. Lawrence Wade showed up, Zara went on. He bid more than anyone else, and when it was over, he just asked me where I wanted to go. It was the most amazing thing. Cordelia watched her niece with a thoughtful look. And on your trip here, he treated you with respect? With absolute respect, Zara promised her. He has been a perfect gentleman. He even spent one night in a stable when there was only one room to be had at an inn. Well, I will be, Cordelia murmured. And what does he plan to do now that you are in San Francisco? Zara paused. I am not completely sure. He mentioned some business in Sacramento. He's thinking about buying a ranch out that way. I believe he is planning to head back tomorrow. Cordelia's sharp eyes did not miss the sadness that crossed Zara's face when she said that. I see, she said simply. Well, we ought to get ready for supper. I imagine you are both hungry after your travels. Supper was a lovely time in Cordelia's small dining room. She turned out to be a fantastic cook and an even better person to talk to, skillfully asking questions that drew Wade's story out of him. He talked more freely than he had with Zara about his years working as a deputy marshal, his choice to go back to ranching, and his hopes of starting his own place near Sacramento. The land I am looking at has good water and plenty of grass for grazing, he explained. It is nothing fancy, but it is enough to build something good. And will you be doing all this ranching by yourself? Cordelia asked, seeming innocent. But Zara sensed there was a reason for her question. Wade glanced quickly over at Zara before he answered. For the time being, ma'am, though I sure hope not forever. The evening went by nicely, and far too fast for Zara. When the clock on the mantel struck 10, Wade got up to go. I had better find a room for the night, he said. My train back to Sacramento is an early one. Nonsense, Cordelia declared. I have a guest room that is perfectly good. I will not have you staying anywhere else. Wade seemed surprised at the offer. That is very kind of you, but I surely would not want to be a bother. Mr. Lawrence, after what you have done for my niece, you could never be a bother in this house, Cordelia told him firmly. Besides, it will give us another chance to talk over breakfast. After a little more convincing, Wade agreed to stay. Cordelia led him to the guest room, which left Zara alone with her own thoughts for a minute. The fact that Wade was really leaving tomorrow settled on her like a heavy blanket. In less than a week, this man had become her anchor, her hope for a new beginning. The idea of going on without him felt all wrong, like a vital piece of her new life was about to disappear. Later on, as Zara was getting ready for bed, a gentle knock came at her door. She opened it and saw Cordelia standing there. Can I come in for a minute, honey? Her aunt asked. Zara nodded, and Cordelia stepped inside, closing the door behind her. She looked at Zara for a long moment before she spoke. You care for him, do you not? She asked straight out. Zara could feel her cheeks getting warm. It is complicated. Cordelia smiled a gentle smile. Matters of the heart usually are. But I watched the two of you this evening, and I do not believe I am wrong to think that his feelings for you are just as strong. It is too soon, Zara argued. We have known each other less than a week, and so much has happened. Time is a poor way to measure a real connection, Cordelia said. Your own mother knew she was going to marry your father right after she met him. She told me so in a letter. Her face softened as she remembered. She wrote, I have met the man I will spend my life with, Cordelia. Do not ask me how I know. I just do. Zara was completely stunned by what she had just heard. She never did tell me that. I suppose she was waiting until you were a bit older. Cordelia gently patted Zara's hand. Now, I'm not saying you should rush into anything, only that you need to be truthful with yourself about how you feel. When Cordelia was gone, Zara just stood there by the window, staring out at the garden washed in moonlight. What in the world did she feel for Wade Lawrence? She was grateful, that was for sure. She respected his honesty and his nerve. She admired that quiet strength and goodness he had. But was it something more? The pang of sadness she felt just thinking about him leaving told her it probably was. The morning sun came up way too fast. Zara took her time getting ready, putting on her best dress, the blue calico, and went to join her aunt and Wade for breakfast. The talk around the table was nice enough, but you could feel the goodbye hanging in the air. Before she knew it, it was time for Wade to head to the station. Cordelia found a clever reason to go take care of something in her shop, which left Zara and Wade standing by themselves in the parlor. "Your aunt is quite a woman," Wade said. "I can surely see why you wanted to come live with her." Zara just nodded. "She has the same spirit as my mother, that same strong and independent way about her." Wade paused for a moment. Then he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out an envelope. "I want you to have this," he said, holding it out toward her. Zara took it from him, her eyes full of questions. "That is the money your father was demanding," Wade explained. "And I will not take a single penny back from you or your aunt. Use it to start your new life right here." "Wade, I simply cannot," she started, but he cut her off gently. "Please. It would do me a world of good to know that money was put to some real use." Zara felt the tears starting to well up in her eyes. "I do not know how to thank you for everything." Wade took a step closer, and his blue eyes were locked on hers. "There is no need for any thanks. These last few days with you have been—" He stopped, trying to find the right words, something more than I can rightly say. The quiet between them felt heavy with things neither of them was saying. Zara caught herself wishing he would just lean in and kiss her, and then her face turned red from her own forwardness. "I ought to get going," Wade said at last, "but I would like to write to you if you would be all right with that." "I would like that very much," Zara said in a rush. There was another moment of silence, and then Wade did something she never expected. He took her hand and lifted it to his lips, placing a soft kiss right on her knuckles. The gesture felt like something from another time, but it was also incredibly personal. "Until I see you again, Zara Adams," he said in a low voice. And just like that, he was gone. He left Zara standing there in her aunt's parlor, her heart just hammering away and her hand still warm from his touch. The days after he left were a whirlwind of new things for Zara. Cordelia started showing her the ropes of the dressmaking business, giving her simple jobs at first. But it did not take long for her to see that her niece had a real gift for design. She also introduced Zara to her group of friends, all of them independent women who had started their own businesses, traveled the world, or just plain refused to live by anyone else's rules. "San Francisco gives a woman more breathing room than most places," Cordelia told her. "Of course, we still have plenty of fences we have to mind." Zara poured all her energy into learning everything she could, not just about making dresses, but about the big, wide world. Cordelia had a small collection of books in her house, and Zara spent her evenings exploring every one. Sometimes she would read out loud to her aunt while the older woman sewed, and their talks would wander from books to politics and then over to fashion. But no matter how full her days were or how exciting her new life was, Zara's mind always seemed to drift back to Wade. He was a man of his word, and he wrote to her regularly, once every week. His letters showed up each Friday, as dependable as the sunrise. He wrote about making headway on the ranch purchase, about the little house he was fixing up, and about all his hopes for the land. His words on paper were just like him in person, plain-spoken but full of thought. And every now and then he would show a dry sense of humor that always made Zara smile. She wrote back to him just as faithfully, telling him all about her life in San Francisco, how her skills in the shop were growing, and what books she was reading. She realized she was sharing more of herself in those letters than she ever had face to face, maybe because the miles between them made it feel safer to open her heart. The weeks turned into months, and summer started to fade into fall. Zara had been in San Francisco for almost 2 months when a letter from Wade came that felt different from all the others. "I will be heading back to San Francisco next week," he wrote. "There are some things I need to talk over with you, things too important to put in a letter. If it is all right with you and your aunt, I would like to come call on you." Zara's heart started to pound as she read his words. What could possibly be so important? And why did the idea of seeing Wade again make her feel so happy and so nervous all at once? Cordelia, who was reading the letter right over Zara's shoulder, gave a knowing smile. "Well now, my dear, it looks like Mr. Lawrence has made up his mind about something." "What are you talking about?" Zara asked, even though deep down she had a pretty good idea. "A man does not travel hundreds of miles to discuss business unless that business involves the heart," Cordelia said with a little chuckle. "I do believe your cowboy is fixing to state his intentions." Zara's cheeks grew hot. "You cannot know that for sure." "Maybe not for certain," Cordelia allowed. "But I have been around long enough to recognize the signs when I see them. The real question is, how do you feel about it? If he does what I think he will?" That was the very question Zara had been asking herself more and more. In the time since he left, her feelings for Wade had done nothing but get stronger. His letters showed a good man with a good heart, a sharp mind, and a kindness that proved her first feelings about him were right. She found herself measuring other men against him, and they all came up short. "I care for him a great deal," she finally admitted. "More than I ever thought I could in such a short while." Cordelia nodded, looking pleased as punch. "In that case, we will welcome Mr. Lawrence with open arms when he gets here." Wade's arrival the next Tuesday stirred up a bit of excitement in Cordelia's shop. The young women sewing in the back giggled behind their hands as the tall cowboy walked in, holding his hat, looking a little out of his element among all the fancy fabrics and displays. But his eyes found Zara right away, and the warmth in his look sent a shiver right through her. "Welcome back to San Francisco, Mr. Lawrence," Cordelia greeted him with a warm smile. "Zara, why do you not take Mr. Lawrence out to the garden? It is a beautiful afternoon to have tea outside." The little garden behind the shop had turned into one of Zara's favorite spots. It was a quiet little place with a couple of fruit trees, some blooming flowers, and a stone bench next to a little fountain. As they got settled with the tea tray Cordelia had sent out, Zara suddenly felt tongue-tied, not sure what to say to this man whose letters had come to mean so much to her. Wade seemed just as unsure, turning his hat over and over in his hands before he finally set it on the bench. "You are looking well," he said. "San Francisco seems to suit you." "It does," Zara agreed. "Aunt Cordelia has been just wonderful, and I am learning so much in the shop. I have truly enjoyed your letters," Wade said. "They gave me a little window into your new life here." "And I have enjoyed yours," Zara answered. "How are things coming along with the ranch?" A look of pride came over Wade's face. "That is part of what I came to tell you. The deal is done. The place is all mine now, 160 acres with good water and decent grass for grazing. The house needs some work, but its bones are good. I have been patching it up a little at a time." "That is just wonderful," Zara said, and she meant it. "You must be awfully proud." "I am." Wade paused, then reached inside his coat pocket. "I brought you something to see." He took out a small photograph on a metal plate and handed it to her. The picture showed a simple farmhouse with a big porch, tucked up against some rolling hills. A huge oak tree stood in the yard, and you could see a little creek running in front. "It is beautiful," Zara said as she looked at the picture. "It is not much to look at," Wade said, "but it is a good solid start. Plenty of room to grow." Something in the way he said that made Zara look up from the picture. His blue eyes were fixed on her face like he was looking for an answer. "Zara," he started, and then he seemed to lose his nerve. He took a deep breath and started over. "These past few months, your letters have been... I found myself looking forward to Fridays more than anything I have ever looked forward to in my life." Zara's heart started to beat a little faster. "I felt the same way about your letters." Hearing that seemed to give him courage, and Wade went on. The ranch is a fine piece of land, but a house is not a home until you have the right people living in it. He reached over the small table and took her hand in his. I came all the way to San Francisco to ask if you would think about making a life in Sacramento with me. Even though she had been half expecting it, hearing him actually say the words took Zara's breath away. Are you asking me to be your wife, Wade? I am, he said, plain and simple. I know it has not been very long, and you are just getting your feet under you here. I would never ask you to give all this up if it is what you truly want. But I believe we could build a really good life together, if you would be willing to try. Zara looked down at their hands, her thoughts spinning. Was this happening too fast? Was she just swapping one man's control for another's? But as soon as the questions popped into her head, she knew the answers. Wade had never once tried to control her, not from that very first moment when he had asked her where she wanted to go. He had always respected her choices and her freedom. Before I give you my answer, she said, choosing her words with care, I have to know something. That day back in paradise when you paid for my freedom, was this what you had in your mind all along? Wade shook his head, his look firm. No. I did what I did then because it was the right thing to do, not because I wanted anything from you. My feelings for you started to grow on our journey, and then even more through our letters. He squeezed her hand softly. I do not want to own you, Zara. I want to be your partner. There is a big difference. That was the perfect thing to say. A smile found its way to Zara's face, and a warm sense of rightness settled over her. Then, yes, Wade Lawrence, I will marry you. And I will help you make that house a proper home. The pure joy that lit up Wade's face chased away any little doubt she might have had left. He lifted her hand to his lips, just like he did the day he left San Francisco. But this time, it felt like a solemn promise, not a goodbye. There is something else I need to tell you, Wade said after a moment. About paradise. Zara went still. What about it? After I left you, I went straight back to Nevada. I pressed charges against your father for fraud, holding you against your will, and a few other things. Judge Harmon took a special interest in the whole affair. Zara just stared at him. You had my father arrested. He was arrested, yes. The trial was 2 weeks ago. He was sentenced to 5 years in the territorial prison. Wade watched her face closely. I know I should have spoken to you first. I do. But I could not let him get away with what he did. Not just for you, but to make sure he could never do that to another woman. Zara was quiet, letting the news sink in. Her father was in prison. The man who raised her, who once loved her and her mother, was now paying for his sins. She felt a whole mess of things at once. Relief, a deep sadness, even a little guilt. But mostly, she felt that justice had been done. Thank you for telling me, she finally said, and for what you did. It was the right thing, even if it is hard to hear. Wade nodded, his eyes full of understanding. And there is one more thing. The court is making him pay you back. All your father's property was sold, and the money is being kept for you. It is a good bit of money. This news was even more of a shock. I am supposed to inherit my father's money after everything he did? Judge Harmon was very firm about it. He said it was your rightful inheritance from your mother, if nothing else. You do not have to decide what to do with it right away, but it is there for you when you are ready. Zara shook her head, amazed at how much her life had turned around in just a few months. She had gone from being treated like property to be sold, to a woman with her own money, her own skills, a loving aunt, and a man who wanted to build a life with her as his equal. I never expected any of this, she said, her voice soft. Wade smiled. Neither did I, but I am thankful for every single step of the road that brought us right here. Later that evening, after Wade went back to his hotel with a promise to see her the next day, Zara sat with Cordelia in the parlor, sharing all the news about the proposal and everything else Wade had told her. Well, I will be, Cordelia said after Zara had finished. A ranch in Sacramento, a hefty inheritance, and a man who respects that you have a mind of your own. That is not half bad for a girl who showed up on my doorstep 2 months ago with nothing but the clothes she was wearing. Zara had to laugh. When you say it like that, it does sound pretty amazing. Life is like that sometimes, my dear. Cordelia's face grew thoughtful. I will miss you something fierce, of course, but Sacramento's not too far. And I have to admit I'm already looking forward to spoiling some grandnieces or grandnephews. Zara blushed. We have not even talked about children yet. There will be plenty of time for all those talks, Cordelia said with a sure nod. The important thing is you found a man who sees the real you and cherishes what he sees. The next few weeks were a happy blur of getting everything ready. Zara and Wade settled on a December wedding right there in San Francisco, with Cordelia hosting the affair. Wade headed back to Sacramento to keep working on the ranch house, promising he would have it ready for them by Christmas. Zara split her time between helping at the dress shop and preparing for her new life. She designed her own wedding gown, a simple but beautiful dress of ivory silk with pearl buttons and a fine lace trim. Cordelia insisted on making it herself, staying up late at night to make sure every last stitch was perfect. You can consider it my wedding gift, she said when Zara fussed about the cost and all the work. Letters kept flying back and forth between San Francisco and Sacramento, now full of plans and shared dreams. Wade wrote that he was adding a second bedroom to the house for the future, a line that made Zara blush while she smiled at what he meant. She wrote back with lists of things they would need for their home, the books she wanted to bring, and ideas for a little garden of her own. December arrived with weather so mild you would not believe it, almost like nature itself was giving them a nod of approval. The wedding was small but full of joy, held in Cordelia's parlor with just a few close friends there to see it. Zara wore her beautiful dress and carried a bouquet of winter roses. Wade, looking handsome and a little nervous in a new suit, could not take his eyes off her when she walked into the room on Cordelia's arm. The minister, a friend of Cordelia's, kept the service simple and sweet. When he pronounced them man and wife, Wade's kiss was gentle, but it held a promise of a deeper passion for the years to come. Cordelia dabbed at her eyes, and even the seamstresses from the shop were sniffling into their handkerchiefs. The wedding breakfast that came after was a happy time, with champagne and a spectacular cake. As they got ready to leave for the train station, Wade told her he had arranged for them to spend their wedding night in a hotel in Sacramento before they went on to the ranch. Cordelia pulled Zara aside for one last hug. "Be happy, my dear girl," she whispered, "and you remember that my door is always open for both of you." Zara held on to her aunt for a moment, just filled with gratitude for this woman who had opened not just her home, but her heart. "Thank you for everything," she said. "We will visit often, I promise." The trip to Sacramento passed by in a happy daze. Zara was so aware of Wade sitting beside her, of the gold band that was now on her finger, of the fact that she was now Mrs. Lawrence. The very thought of it was both exciting and a little hard to believe. Their wedding night at the best hotel in Sacramento was a revelation. Wade was as kind and considerate in their most private moments as he had been in everything else. Zara, who had been a little nervous, was surprised to find herself responding with a passion she never knew she had. In the quiet moments afterward, lying there in her husband's arms, she felt a deep sense of peace, of having finally found her rightful place in the world. The next day, they traveled the last little way to their new home. As the wagon Wade had hired came over the top of a hill, the ranch appeared below. It was the house from the drawing, but now with smoke curling from the chimney in a welcoming way and new curtains in the windows. "Welcome home, Mrs. Lawrence," Wade said, his arm tightening around her waist. Home. It was such a simple word, but it meant everything. As Wade helped her down from the wagon and then carried her over the threshold of their house, Zara felt the last pieces of her new life fall perfectly into place. This was where she belonged, not as property to be bought and sold, but as a woman who was valued for who she was, ready to build a life with the man who asked that all-important question on a dusty street in paradise. It seemed their answer had been found together. 5 years passed by, with each one bringing new happiness and new challenges to the Lawrence Ranch. The house got bigger as their family did, first with their son William, born in the winter of 1877, and then with their daughter Eleanor 2 years after that. Wade's smart management and Zara's clever investing of her inheritance turned the small ranch into one of the most successful in the whole area. Zara had used some of her inheritance to start a little business of her own, a dress shop in Sacramento, much like Cordelia's but with her own special designs. It did very well under her guidance, even as she juggled being a mother and a rancher's wife. Wade had supported her dreams completely, and he would often look after the children while she went to work in town. Cordelia came to visit all the time, loving every minute of being an honorary grandmother to the Lawrence children. She had made her own San Francisco shop bigger and now had a dozen seamstresses working for her, including a few young women Zara had sent her way from Sacramento. On this one evening in the summer of 1880, Zara was standing on the porch of their home. She was watching Wade teach 5-year-old William how to ride his new pony, while 3-year-old Eleanor giggled from where she sat on the fence. The setting sun washed everything in a golden light, turning Wade's dark hair to bronze and showing the proud line of his shoulders as he steadied their son. As she looked at her family, Zara thought about the long road that had brought her to this place. From a frightened young woman on a selling block to a respected businesswoman, a cherished wife and a mother, it felt like a miracle. But it had all started with a simple question from a man who understood that being free meant nothing if you did not have a choice. "Where to?" Wade had asked on that day. And together they had found their answer. It was not a place on a map, but a life they built together, founded on respect, on understanding, and on love. Wade looked up then and saw her watching them. He gave her that same warm smile that still made her heart flutter, and he motioned for her to come join them. As Zara stepped off the porch to wrap her family in a hug in the fading light, she knew with a certainty that reached clear to her soul that this was exactly where she was meant to be. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to deliver meaningful stories with valuable life lessons. Every narrative is crafted to entertain, inspire, and empower our audience. We believe that great stories can change lives, and we are committed to bringing you content that matters. Thank you for being part of our community.